Hello, and welcome back to A Rose by Any Other Name, the podcast where we pull Shakespeare apart piece by piece and work out what his plays are actually doing. I'm Mr. Rose, and in this series, I'll be taking us through Othello one scene at a time, with a particular focus on the ideas, the dramatic choices, and quotes that can help you build a strong external exam response. Last episode, we began in the darkness of a Venetian street. Iago told us that he hated Othello, admitted that his loyalty was false, and helped construct a racist and threatening image of a man that the audience has not met yet. Now, in Act 1, Scene 2, Othello finally enters. This is Shakespeare's chance to let us compare the rumour with the reality. And the contrast is immediate. The supposed violent beast of Iago's description does not storm onto stage. He arrives calm, confident, and in control. Other men draw their swords, but Othello prevents violence. He is insulted, threatened, and accused. Yet he chooses to answer through reason and lawful authority. So today, we are asking one central question. How does Shakespeare use Othello's first appearance to challenge the prejudiced story that has already been told about him? On the screen are my AI characters that you can refer back to if you get a little bit confused. Sometimes it's easy to take a screenshot or to write this down. So, our scene in brief. The scene continues on the streets of Venice at night. Othello is with Iago and several attendants carrying torches. Iago immediately begins performing the role of loyal servant. He claims that he was so offended by Roderigo's insults against Othello that he almost attacked him. Of course, we know that this is all false. In the previous scene, Iago was the person encouraging Roderigo and also provoking Brabantio. This creates dramatic irony from the opening lines. Iago warns Othello that Brabantio is influential and may use the law to end the marriage or punish him. Othello is not frightened. He believes that his military service, his social standing, and the integrity of his character will defend him. Cassio then arrives with officers from the Duke. Venice is facing an urgent threat involving Cyprus, and the Senate needs Othello immediately. This interruption is important because it confirms that Othello is not an outsider with no standing. He is a trusted general whose abilities are essential to the state. Brabantio arrives soon afterwards with Roderigo and armed officers. He calls Othello a thief and accuses him of using magic, charms, and drugs to control Desdemona. Brabantio cannot accept that his daughter might have freely chosen a man like Othello. When swords are drawn, Othello calmly orders both groups to stop. Rather than resisting arrest or respond violently, he agrees to answer Brabantio's accusations before the Duke. The scene ends with everyone heading towards the Senate, where private prejudice will be tested in a public setting. So, what is Shakespeare doing in this scene? Firstly, he exposes Iago's performance. The very first speaker is Iago, and the first thing he does is lie about the previous scene. He claims that he nearly stabbed Roderigo because Roderigo spoke disrespectfully about Othello. We know the truth. Iago was working with Roderigo, insulting Othello, and deliberately awakening Brabantio. This means the scene begins with dramatic irony. Othello hears loyalty, while the audience hears performance. Iago is especially dangerous because he does not merely hide his hatred. He manufactures evidence of devotion. He presents himself as the servant who has defended Othello's honor. His false loyalty, therefore, appears active and convincing. In Act 1, Scene 1, Shakespeare introduces Othello through contrast. In Act 2, it presents it through contrast. So, Act 1, Scene 1 presented Othello through animal imagery, sexual panic, and racial abuse. Act 1, Scene 2 now presents him through measured speech and controlled action. This structural contrast positions audiences to recognize the unreliability of prejudice. The racist caricature that was presented does not survive contact with the person it claimed to describe. Othello's first lines are brief and restrained. When Iago describes his supposed urge to attack Roderigo, Othello simply replies, "'Tis better as it is." He immediately rejects unnecessary violence. Shakespeare allows conduct rather than argument to disprove the earlier stereotype. Shakespeare also wants to establish Othello's confidence and public worth. Othello trusts that his service to Venice will speak more powerfully than Brabantio's accusations. This confidence is partly personal, but it's also political. Venice may treat him as racially different, yet it depends on his military skill. That creates a tension that runs through the play. Othello is valued by the state when his abilities are needed, but he remains vulnerable to prejudice in his personal life. He can command armies and advise senators, yet his marriage is treated as unbelievable or criminal. Shakespeare also places self knowledge against stereotyping. Iago and Brabantio attempt to define Othello from the outside. Othello responds with a clear sense of who he is. He refers to his ancestry, his achievements, his title, and his perfect soul. This does not mean that Othello is entirely humble. He's proud of his status and believes in his own worth. However, his confidence is presented as grounded in service, identity, and honor, not in the dehumanizing fantasies that were imposed upon him. Shakespeare also wants to expose the denial of Desdemona's agency. Brabantio's accusations depend on one assumption, that Desdemona could not genuinely choose Othello. He lists the wealthy Venetian men that she rejected and concludes that magic must explain her marriage. The logic is deeply revealing. Brabantio calls his conclusion reasonable, but it's shaped by racism and patriarchy. Because Othello does not fit the husband Brabantio imagines for his daughter, Desdemona's choice is treated as impossible. Her agency is replaced with a story of enchantment and theft. Shakespeare also decides to move the conflict from the street to the state. The street is a space of noise, accusation, and drawn weapons. The Senate promises a more formal space of evidence, testimony, and law. Othello's willingness to go before the Duke shows confidence in public judgment. However, Shakespeare does not suggest that institutions are automatically free from prejudice. Instead, he creates a test. Will Othello's words and Desdemona's testimony be enough to overcome the assumptions that surround them? We are now onto our positioning of audience. So the audience is positioned to admire Othello's composure. We've just heard him described as a dangerous and animalistic, but when real danger appears, he's the person who prevents bloodshed. We're also positioned to distrust Iago more deeply. We already know that he lies, but this scene demonstrates how easily he changes roles. With Roderigo, he is a co-conspirator. With Othello, he is a protective servant. The transformation is so smooth that Othello has no obvious reason to doubt him. Brabantio's accusations also position the audience to see prejudice presenting itself as logic. He insists that his claims are probable and palpable to thinking. But the argument rests on his inability to imagine Desdemona desiring a black man. Finally, the audience is encouraged to feel the tension between Othello's confidence and our knowledge of the tragedy. His belief that his character will manifest him rightly is, well, to put it nicely, admirable. But we already know that Iago intends to control how others interpret him. Othello trusts that the truth will reveal itself. The tragedy will show how easily truth can be obscured by manipulation. We're now up to some of our key quotes, and as always, some of these quotes I may have discussed in class, some of them I may not have. They're just a collection of quotes that I think are important to have a little bit of a chat about or to analyze a little bit further. My first quote is, I lack inequity sometimes to do me service. Iago pretends that he is not wicked enough to commit the violence Othello's honour supposedly deserves. The line is deeply ironic because, as the audience, we've already heard him announce his deception and provoke Brabantio. The abstract noun inequity means wickedness. Iago's claim that he lacks it becomes a performance of reluctant morality. He makes dishonesty sound like a virtue. This quote can support an exam argument about dramatic irony, maybe false loyalty, or manipulation of reputation. My second quote, my services which I have done the seniority, that's a tough word, shall out-tongue his complaints. Othello believes that his service to Venice will speak more loudly than Brabantio's accusations. The personification in out-tongue turns military achievements and complaint into competing voices. The line establishes Othello's confidence in merit and public reputation. It also introduces an important tension. Can a person's actions truly speak for themselves, or can language reshape how those actions are understood? This becomes tragically significant because Iago's greatest weapon is his ability to make false interpretations out-tongue reality. My third quote, but that I love the gentle Desdemona, I would not my unoused free condition put into circumscription and confine for the sea's worth. Othello explains that he values his freedom so highly that his love for Desdemona could persuade him to accept the restrictions of marriage. The vastness suggested by the sea's worth emphasizes the scale of that love. His description of Desdemona as gentle sharply contrasts with Iago's crude sexual imagery from the previous scene. Othello speaks of affection and commitment, while Iago reduces the relationship to lust and making it quite animalistic. This quote is useful for challenging a simplistic interpretation of Othello as immediately possessive. At this stage, Shakespeare presents the marriage as a choice made by love. Quote 4, not I must be found. When Iago advises Othello to hide from Brabantio, Othello refuses. The short, declarative statement communicates certainty and courage. The verb found also connects the scene's concern with identity. Othello wants to be visible because he trusts that open scrutiny will reveal the truth. Had a bit of a mind blank there. Iago survives by hiding intention, but Othello believes that being fully seen will protect him. My parts, my title, and my perfect soul shall manifest me rightly. The tricolon here gives Othello's self-defense clarity and balance. Parts refers to his qualities and abilities, title to his public rank, and perfect soul to his moral integrity. The verb manifest here suggests that truth will make itself visible. Othello believes that identity is stable and it can be recognized accurately. This directly opposes Iago's principle of I am not what I am. These two lines create a powerful contrast for an essay. Iago treats identity as a disguise that he can manipulate, while Othello initially trusts that inner character and outer reputation will align. Keep up your bright swords, for the dew will rust them. This is one of Othello's most memorable early commands. While armed men prepare to fight, he responds with calm wit. The image of Jew rusting the swords almost makes the weapons seem unnecessary and foolish. The imperative, keep up, establishes authority, but Othello does not need to shout or threaten. His control over the conflict demonstrates the discipline expected of an experienced general. For an exam, what I would do here with this quote is I would explain the dramatic contrast. Brabantio and his men expect danger from Othello, yet Othello is a character who restrains violence. Our next quote: "You shall more command with years than with your weapons." Othello acknowledges Brabantio's age and social authority, even when Brabantio threatens him. Good signor, said at the beginning of this quote, is respectful, and the comparative structure values mature authority over physical force. The line positions Othello as diplomatic and controlled. It also allows him to assert command without humiliating Brabantio. He de escalates the encounter while preserving his own dignity as well as Brabantio's. Were it my cue to fight, I should have known it without a prompter. Othello uses a theatrical metaphor. A cue tells an actor when to enter or to act, while a prompter supplies forgotten lines. He tells Brabantio that as a soldier, he does not need another person to instruct him when fighting is necessary. The metaphor is significant in a play filled with performance. Iago constantly gives other characters false cues and maneuvers them into roles within his private drama. Here, however, Othello refuses Brabantio's invitation to play the violent role assigned to him. And my last quote: "Run from her guardage to the sooty bosom of such a thing as thou." Brabantio's language is openly racist and dehumanizing. Sooty refers to Othello's skin color and carries the associations of dirt or contamination. The noun thing denies him full humanity. The possessive idea within her guardage also reflects patriarchy. Brabantio understands Desdemona as someone under male protection and control. Her decision to leave that control is interpreted as evidence that she has been bewitched. This quote can support an analysis of race, or patriarchal power, or even the gap between Othello's dignified behavior and the identity imposed upon him. So, bringing it all together, Act 1, Scene 2 gives Othello the opportunity to answer the image created in his absence. He does not defend himself by delivering a long speech about racism. Instead, Shakespeare lets his language and behavior reveal discipline, confidence, and dignity. At the same time, the scene does not pretend that personal virtue makes prejudice disappear. Brabantio still sees Othello through a racist stereotype, and Iago is already working from inside Othello's circle of trust. The scene therefore sets up two competing ideas about identity. Othello believes that his parts, title, and perfect soul will make the truth visible, and Iago believes identity can be performed, hidden, and rewritten. The tragedy grows from the collision between these two beliefs. On the screen now are some exam-focused discussion questions. Whether or not you are answering these in your book or having a go questioning friends or having a conversation around the dinner table or, dare I say, even with artificial intelligence. So my first question is, how does Othello's first appearance challenge the description of him constructed in Act 1, Scene 1? Why is it significant that Othello prevents violence when Brabantio's men draw their swords? How does Shakespeare use dramatic irony in Iago's opening conversation with Othello? What does "my services shall out-tongue his complaints" reveal about Othello's faith in merit and reputation? How does Brabantio's accusations of witchcraft deny Desdemona agency? Compare I am not what I am, with my parts, my title, and my perfect soul shall manifest me rightly. What opposing ideas about identity do these two lines establish? How does Othello's language demonstrate both confidence and control? Why does Shakespeare introduce the political crisis involving Cyprus during this personal conflict? How is Othello simultaneously valued and marginalized by Venetian society? Which quote best positions the audience to admire Othello? Justify your choice through a close analysis. Construct a thesis for this prompt. In Othello, prejudice distorts the way characters interpret reality. How could Act 1, Scene 2 support your response? Does Othello's confidence in trust, public judgment, appear admirable, naive, or maybe both? Explain your interpretation. And lastly, it is my final challenge. I want you to build a comparison using one quote from Scene 1 and one from Scene 2, and complete this sentence. While blank constructs Othello as blank through blank, Othello's own use of blank positions the audience to see him as blank. If your comparison explains how the contrast shapes the audience's judgment, you are analyzing Shakespeare's dramatic construction rather than treating each quote in isolation. Well, this brings us to the end of Act 1, Scene 2. Othello has stepped into the light and challenged the story told about him, but the accusations are now heading into the highest political chamber in Venice. In the next episode, we enter the Senate for Act 1, Scene 3. Othello will tell the story of how Desdemona fell in love with him, and Desdemona will finally speak for herself. Until then, remember, when Shakespeare gives you two conflicting versions of a character, the contrast is usually where the most interesting analysis begins. I'm Mr. Rose, and this has been A Rose by Any Other Name. Thank you.